each nation bringing glory and contributing immensely to the economic growth is in the uncertain dark cloud. All major national and international sporting events have been cancelled due to the current pandemic. So today, various aspects of dealing with the current situation, keeping it together in the present times, and planning ahead for the future will be deliberated upon with our experts. And as they say, human grit and determination will continue to find silver linings even in these trying times. So, ladies and gentlemen, with these positive words, let's kickstart today's session. Let me briefly take you through the format of today's program. We will commence with the inaugural session, which is the first session. This is going to be followed by 3 panel discussions by eminent experts from the sporting industry. And we are very pleased to welcome Honorable Minister for this inaugural session, Shri Tushar Kanti Behra, Minister of State for Electronics and IT, Sports and Youth Affairs, Government of Odisha. So once again, a very warm welcome to you and thank you for your presence and gracing this forum. We warmly welcome Vishal, Commissioner cum Secretary, Department of Sports and Youth Services, Department of Tourism, Government of Odisha. Unfortunately, Shri Manish Kharbanda has not been able to join us yet. We have, ladies and gentlemen, as I was discussing, we have broken the discussion.
I'll give you a call a little later. Yeah.
We have broken the discussions into 3 panel discussions, which will be ably conducted by noted Indian sports writer, journalist, and author, Mr. Ayaz Memon. A very warm welcome to you, sir. We are very glad you could make it. We believe we were having some technical glitches. We also have Mr. Kamal Agrawal, convener of MSME CII Odisha State MGPGL Honda. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to just mention before we commence the inaugural session, special mention for Odia news platform, OdishaLIVE, which will carry the live streaming of this webinar on www.youtube.com/OdishaLIVE, as well as www.facebook.com/OdishaLIVE. So, ladies and gentlemen, with these words, we are going to now start our inaugural session. Our first speaker is someone who has made a considerable contribution by putting Odisha on the international sports map by successfully spearheading the Men's Hockey Cup 2018 in Bhubaneswar, which was being hailed for being the best organized so far. Earlier, he also led the team responsible for hosting the 22nd Asian Athletics Championship in 2017, with preparation period of just 3 months. In his current role, he also wields the additional charge of being officer on special duty to the Chief Secretary of Odisha and is part of the core team handling the COVID-19 pandemic in the state. So with these words, may I request Mr. Vishal Dev to kindly share the government's perspective with us. Over to you, Mr. Vishal Dev.
Thank you, Sanati, for a very warm introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here today with, of course, experts like Mr. Ayaz Memon. I believe Sabha is there, Murli is there, and a whole lot of other very distinguished panelists. So we've been eating, drinking, and sleeping COVID for the last 3 months, almost a quarter of time here. And I would not really like to speak or dwell upon what havoc it has created, but we will all be talking of this new normal. In fact, you mentioned this word once again, and we all have been saying that things will change. I believe things have already changed. The way we've been living for the last 3 months has been absolutely unique. No one ever thought that we'll come to a situation where even getting essential stuff would be very difficult. Couple of things. I mean, there have been a few realizations. One is the fact that all of us have come to know that we can live with a lot less than what we used to. And in governments, of course, everyone says that there are too many people than required. But I think even in the private sector, people have realized that perhaps there's an excess of people and that we can work with a lot lesser number of people. You mentioned about the impact that it has had on the sporting world. We've seen some of the biggest tournaments getting cancelled or rescheduled, including the biggest of them all, Olympics. we were to host the FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup in November, which has got rescheduled to February next year. So things have been going topsy-turvy. But you see, sports is such an integral part of our lives. And I often say that that's the only thing that perhaps unites all of us as a nation, as a country. Uh, Everything else divides, whether it's language, religion, race, caste, and all. But I think when it comes to sports, all of us are together. So it will come back. I have no doubts about it. Sports will flourish, but I think it'll come back in vastly different ways from what we've been used to. At the same time, this also presents us new opportunities of conducting sports. It has brought to the fore the necessity of prioritizing safety and health protocols for all our stakeholders in the sports world, whether it's players, coaches, spectators, officials, managers. And one has seen that gradually, I think, once the unlock down phase started, you've seen sporting activities getting resumed. It's a delight to see Dhuti Chand and Ameya Malik, our athletic stars from Odisha, coming back to Kalinga Stadium to start their practice. Uh, there have also been many learnings, and there will be more learnings from the resumption of sports across the world. We've seen several experiments of matches being held without spectators to empty stands. A sight which is not really heartening, but then these are the ways of the world, and we kind of have to get used to it. Though I'm sure as we move forward, there would be changes. I mean, if a stadium capacity is about 60,000, I see no reason why we can't admit at least 20 or 30,000 people into the stands. What it has also done is it has kind of done away with the boundary that existed between live spectators in the stadium and those watching sports from home. And it therefore brings to fore this issue of how technology can be leveraged, not just for enhancing the sports, but also its consumption and administration. Technology will play a big role, and I think one of the matches very recently had these stands kind of getting filled with spectators on Zoom. So we'll see many similar things as far as usage of technology for enhancing the sports per se go. Another major area is that with businesses taking a hit, I think the issue of sports getting sponsorships would become a challenge. I believe Global Data Sportscan has said that between January and March, there's been a 40% dip in sponsorship for sports. So two specific challenges arise out of that. One is that the growth and development of sports is likely to get skewed, and there is a possibility that sports like cricket and football might get prioritized over many other sports. So how we deal with that is something which we'll have to think of. It will also affect the work of several federations as far as the development of sports per se is concerned. I think what it calls for is some out-of-the-box innovative solutions. And one of the things that comes to my mind is an opportunity for the governments and corporates to come together, work with each other to come out with these innovative solutions. One of the things that we did some time back in Odisha was setting up these high-performance centers across several disciplines: athletics, hockey, football, swimming, shooting, badminton, etc., where we tied up with a corporate to primarily fund the whole high performance center, and with an eminent sports person or an agency to run these centers, because we were very clear that governments, getting into running of such institutions is basically messy. We create more mess, so it's best to get some professionals to run them. So these kind of solutions, I think we'll have to think of. Of course, the last 3 months have also seen a huge rise in the growth of esports, and how that pans out is another thing that we'll have to see. Let me end by saying that my only wish as of now is that these crazy times come to an end at the earliest possible, and that we're back to the old days where one went to the stadium and enjoyed a game. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shal Dev, for sharing the government's perspective with us. You spoke very positively about the new opportunities, prioritizing health and safety measures, and about the new normals and changes, especially by leveraging technology as a catalyst in creating this, and also coming together of government and corporate and joining hands to achieve this. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are extremely pleased to have Honorable Minister Shri Tushar Kanti Behra with us today. Under the leadership of Honorable Minister, who has been leading the sports and youth services since the past 1 year. The state has hosted international sporting events, including the FIH Men's Series Final 2019, the Commonwealth Table Tennis Championship 2019, and the FIH Hockey Pro League, and has earned global accolades from the sporting fraternity. He and his department have taken significant initiatives as per Honorable Chief Minister's vision, sports for youth and youth for future. Developing world-class sports infrastructure for the upcoming mega events like FIFA U17 Women's World Cup 2020 and the Men's Hockey World Cup 2023, introducing initiatives for grassroots sports development and setting up high-performance centers in a unique partnership model with corporates and eminent sports persons are some of the key projects that will take Odisha sports to new heights of recognition. Under his aegis, the sports ecosystem is being strengthened holistically to make sports inclusive as well as accessible to all. So, ladies and gentlemen, with these words, I would like to invite Honorable Minister and request him to kindly deliver the keynote address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shanti. Am I audible?
Yes.
Here you are.
Respected Vice Chairman, CII Odisha, respected Secretary, Sports and Youth Services Department, Government of Odisha, distinguished speakers, officials of CII Odisha, panelists, and spectators of this webinar. At the very outset, good evening, one and all. I'd like to express my thanks to CII for extending an invitation to this platform to discuss and deliberate upon the topic future of sports post COVID-19. The entire world is experiencing the adverse effects of the coronavirus pandemic, and sports sector has not been spared either, which is why it becomes meaningful for influencers and professionals from the sports fraternity to come together and deliberate on how to resume sports in a structured manner while ensuring the and safety for our sports persons and individuals of this community. These are uncharted waters for us all and a learning curve. Best practices from across the sector are being considered to chart a course ahead. Moving forward, this phase might lead to a much required change in the sporting fraternities and also in the sporting landscape. Odisha has been a hub for sports and sporting events, and as we hope to resume sports in full swing, we have issued detailed SOP as per the guidelines of the central government across our sports fraternities. Elite athletes like Duti Chand and Amya Malik have resumed training at the Kalinga Stadium, and in coming weeks, we will be taking planned and phased measures for resumption of training across sports complexes and other facilities. Coaches across sports may have resort to creating online modules to continue training of their athletes virtually as much as possible. Future, certain elements of sports training that can continue to happen online and can be offered to trainees and sports persons through different models will get integrated into the training regime. The sports events scenario is gradually opening up. FIFA has announced the dates for FIFA Under 17 Women's World Cup in February 2021. Other federations are monitoring the situation closely and plan to schedule their events soon. We are very hopeful to resume events in the country by the end of this year. We are in constant touch with our partners and sports federations and other stakeholders for the same and will be extending all our support as before. It is paramount that we prioritize the health of our athletes and sports staff and adhere to precautionary measures and guidelines before we consider resumption of sports, be it training or be it events. Going forward, maximum health protocols will be ensured. Administration will develop comprehensive events and venue and health and safety guidelines for all involved in such activities. This will include facilitating sanitation bylaws, upgrading building guidelines, and incorporating social distancing norms, which could be added to venue houses rules and contracts as well. In addition, we will accept closed stadia at the new normal. We foresee a transformation in sports, broadcasting, and consumption of sports contests in the future. Technology and content on OTT platforms will play a crucial role in not just engaging and entertaining the fans, but also remotely or digitally cheering for the fans and teams as well. Since sports remains a priority sector, we will continue to develop and strengthen our sports infrastructure to make sports inclusive and accessible to all. Several key projects, including the development and renovation of pitches for the FIFA Under-17 Women World Cup, have resumed. The 2023 Men's Hockey World Cup 2023 is ahead, and our work towards it has commenced. We will be also coming up with our permanent facilities of some of our high-performance centers. State government will continue to evaluate the ground realities, check a roadmap for sports in the state as well. We'll use this time to generate awareness on the importance of integrating education and sports in addition to capacity building and skill development of physical education teachers. CII Sports is already doing phenomenal work in this regard, and I commend their efforts. We may have some notes to exchange later. It is going to be the administrators, policymakers, sports federations, and other stakeholders who have got to step up and take a proper lead. I believe collectively we can build a unique model, a new era in sports and sporting events. Thank you all.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your notable keynote address. Thank you so much for sharing the roadmap of the Government of Odisha on handling the current scenario and the measures for improving the sports health of the sector for the future. Well, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we conclude the opening session. However, before we move to a panel discussion, at this point, I would like to invite our panel discussion moderator, Ayaz Memon, to put forth his thoughts and also take up a few questions for the inaugural panel. Over to you.
Thank you. I think we've covered a fair ground through Mr. Das and Minister Hera. So, in my opinion, and I've been to Bhubaneswar a couple of times and seen the sporting facilities there and the encouragement that sports has got. So obviously, a lot will depend on how the government supports sporting activities. It's not just left to the individual federations. Obviously, they play a big part. But the governments, state governments, and the sports ministry and the IOA, etc., they all have to get involved to resurrect sports from the comatose situation it finds itself in today. I think that much is now accepted in a agreed form by everybody. Any thoughts on that from either of these two gentlemen or both, Mr. Das or Mr. Hera, on how perhaps Odisha can give a lead in this direction?
Yeah, sir, I believe you have put the question to Mr. Vishal Dev and or to the Honorable Minister.
Yes, yes.
Well, either of us can answer, but good to be seeing you, Mr. Memon, after almost 2.5 years. I think you were here in Bhubaneswar for the Asian Athletics Championship.
I was, yes.
Yes. So, you see, as far as the government of Odisha goes, we have been wanting and trying to do a lot of things. The idea is to adapt the ecosystem for sport, of different sports that are priority for us. The archery, hockey, where our boys and girls are doing well. We would like to strengthen it from the grassroots up. And developing infrastructure, setting up international training and coaching facility, supporting them completely. take up training programs here in India or abroad. These are the few things that we've been doing. And you're also aware that we are the sponsors of the National Hockey League, both men, women, senior, junior. And we were the first state to do it. So we are also the only state so far which actually has teams in any league. We have Kalinga Lancers, a team in the Hockey India League, and we now have Odisha FC, one of the teams in the ISL football. So, these are the kind of things that we are doing. And I remember when we got the decision to sponsor the national hockey teams, so there were lots of questions as to why the state coming forward and sponsoring a national team. But where our logic was that if 10 or 15 states come forward and do the same thing, you see, the kind of support that sports will get across the country would be phenomenal. That's our objective, and our Honorable Chief Minister has this vision, which our Minister also spoke about. So there's a very strong desire to connect with the youth, and therefore his slogan of sports for youth, youth for future. That's what we're trying to implement and execute. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, a lot of things will change, obviously, at the elite level. I think one of the biggest challenges that will come is getting sports at the grassroots level alive and kicking again, because the fear factor there might be, greater, though it's not finding expression in the media. Young moms and dads wanting to send their children for sporting activities or not is going to be a big issue. I just met, or I spoke actually, we've all been in lockdown. I spoke to the mother of a 6.5-year-old swimmer from Mumbai, and so she said, will it be safe if my daughter gets into the same pool again? Isn't there a danger to her? And not just that, the girl herself was kind of, nowadays kids even 6-7 years old are plugged into the information age, and they have a lot of information about COVID-19 themselves. And this girl was actually getting some nightmares about what COVID-19 might do to her if she plays sports with the other kids. Now, these are challenges that need to be faced. I know we've got Shilpa Desai there, and this is something that I'm going to ask her later. But I thought this might, because at the personal, at the club level, at the federation level, maybe you can appoint counselors and stuff. But at a more broad-based, for grassroots level, you need to get the state government also involved in some way.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Should I take this opportunity to answer this question?
Please.
Yeah, I believe we have been speaking about international events, national events, big ticket events, and professional sports person engaged in India and abroad, and how it has impacted. But as a lifestyle choice, sports has not been not seen the kind of change that other countries have seen. In India, we are still struggling. We don't see school kids playing. We don't have grounds in cities. We don't have opportunities for our kids to go out and play. Like if I compare a school in US and compare a school in India, a school in US might have around 5 to 6 different discipline coaches and assistant coaches, but in India we don't have. So this is the time where we can set up a ecosystem and a culture where we can put, like in Odisha, if we have around 6,000 secondary high school and high schools, around 1,000 high schools and 6,000 odd private schools. And if government gives an order that every school should have a minimum 3 to 4 discipline of sports, an assistant coach. Currently, we just have a PTE, physical education teacher, who handles maybe 2,000 students. But we have a teacher for history, we have a teacher for geography, we have a teacher for arts, we have a teacher for physics, for every subject. But for whole school, we have one PET. So can we provide something similar? Because in sports fraternity, if someone hits the national and international level, then he has a career. But what about the others? It's for them, existence is hand to mouth. Even in current circumstances where the professionals have been pushed to the limits, just imagine what's the situation of the amateur sports persons.
Yeah.
Imagine of the people who are playing in the state level. So they don't have this kind of, we don't have a system which can actually go ahead and help every sports person and anyone who's playing sports, or bring it as a culture within the society. So community sports, driving school sports, driving grassroots level sports, and every sphere within the curriculum of education is very important today, which we haven't done. In cities, we have parks, we have parking places, we have markets, but we don't have playgrounds.
Yeah.
So the government should invest hugely on this and support the sports person and provide systems which can be with a public participation and a private participation, giving orders to the private school that you need to have 3 to 5 discipline of sports, or else we don't give you the license. So this is how it can be done, like involving more sports people and putting every kid an opportunity to play a different sport.
So before we move on to the panel discussion, I have a suggestion for the government of Odisha, and this would apply to any state, but because we are on a webinar with the Odisha government involved, so every housing colony, wherever it may be in India, if it has got a simple basic thing like a hoop, a basketball hoop attached, you'll find that kids can go and play, boys and girls, and they get initiated into sports. I think we need what you're saying is right. We need to integrate sport into our everyday lives. You know, that's the best way to become a sporting nation, because not everybody has access to an elite club or facilities which may demand entrance fees, etc. But if it is there in every year, it should be made mandatory that when a housing society is built, there is some infrastructure there for kids who are 6, 8, 10 years old to go and play. That's my suggestion.
So, excellent. Do we have any more questions, or we can
Can you hear me? Can you hear me here, Ayaz? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Shilpa here. Can I add this value to this question which you have raised up on children and the future of sports?
Yeah. So, Doctor, I'm coming. We'll be discussing that in the panel discussion. I just
Absolutely. Sure.
Just wait for that. Otherwise, we'll run out of sequence.
Ayasa, one more point on this. We can also drive community sports, like most of the slums and ghettos where the kids are, placed in very small locations, maybe lakhs of people stay. They're very small grounds. If government can do something at the panchayat level in those urban slums where sports can be driven into the kids' lifestyle, it can actually improve the society and actually help, bring down the crime rate and a lot of other things, even the drug abuse and other things. Sports can be a part of it.
Absolutely. Completely true. So I think without much ado, we need to move on. Sorry, is there
which I believe these are the certain things which I believe the government has not yet implemented in a big way. We have done well in Odisha with regards to international events and all, but I believe from a community level or from the grassroots level, we are far behind bigger states like Haryana and all, sporting states like Kerala and all.
Well, I might just add here, and this is without any bias because we are on this webinar. My experience so far has been that actually Odisha may have started a little late, but has done quite a lot of sporting activity in the last 3, 4 years, 5 years, maybe. So there is a real pitch being made to make sports integral to the state, and which is a fantastic thing to see.
Honorable Minister and Mr. Vishaldev for sharing the perspectives with us. And
shall we move on to the panel discussion now?
Yeah. So I was just saying that I was wanting to thank Honorable Minister and Mr. Vishaldev once again for sharing the perspectives with us. And through this inaugural session, we have had some very interesting insights. We're now going to move on to our first panel discussion. As you're aware that this is on a very important topic of the economic impact of COVID-19 on sports, and everybody is talking about. So before we begin the session, let me take this opportunity to extend a very warm welcome to our 3 speakers for this first panel discussion. Mr. Ashish Bhushan, Director of Business Development of Program International, Mr. Harish Dhawani, Founder Indus Club, and Mr. Jaydev Mahapatra, Founder of AFA and Football Coach. Once again, a very warm welcome to you. Quickly, before we start, I just want to briefly introduce our dynamic moderator, Mr. Ayaz Memon. He's a very popular face on television.
You all know me.
All right. So I will skip that, but I just want to say that thank you so much for joining us. We're indeed Very privileged to have you and listen to your years of experience and wisdom. So without further ado, I want to request you to please take over the first panel discussion. Over to
Thank you, Sanati. So, welcome, Ashish, Harish, and Jaydev. And let's get to the, let me cut straight to the chase quickly. The economic impact of COVID-19 on sports. And Harish, let me start with you. Is this annus horribilis in the history of sport ever? I mean, this is the worst case scenario one could. I mean, you couldn't even think something like this would happen, right? I mean, the entire world going into lockdown. Even during World War One or World War Two, there was some sporting activity happening somewhere or the other. So Wimbledon didn't happen in the Second World War. French Open didn't happen for 1 year, but the US Open kept happening, and so on and so forth. First class cricket didn't happen in England, but first class cricket continued in India then, undivided India. So how do you see this scenario, Harish?
Pessimistic than most people I'm listening to in different parts of the economy with regard to how fast looking at the economic aspects. And I personally believe that the sports industry will be the first to recover. If you look at the most deeply affected industries, hospitality, aviation, etc., will be the last to recover because they are necessarily social contact businesses. Sports can, to some extent, be staged without social contact. I know a spectator-less world is not an ideal thing for sport, but we are seeing that within 10 weeks of the lockdown starting in Europe, sport has resumed. The Bundesliga has resumed. The Serie A is about to resume. The English Premier League is about to resume, subject to government permission. And if you look at in the overall context, relying upon what medical experts are saying, that possibly a vaccine is 1 year away, possibly a cure is slightly longer away, but a vaccine is likely to be around in a year's time.
Yeah.
When you look at, sport is infinite. Sport has been around for thousands of years. The Greeks invented the Olympics, and sport will be around for thousands of years more. And to have a 6 months or 4 months of impact on a particular sector, from an economic point of view, I'm limiting myself to the economic impact on industry. I don't think it's that scary as people are making it sound. Now, if I divide the sports economy into these 4 biggest pillars, broadcasting, streaming, radio, basically electronic media is one source of revenue for sport. The second revenue stream is sponsorship. The third revenue stream is ticketing and hospitality. And the fourth revenue stream is the sale of merchandise and gear. That's the 4th biggest. Let's analyze this in 30 seconds each. I'll start with the smallest segment, perceived to be the smallest segment, which is actually not the smallest segment, merchandising and gear. I think it is by now clearly understood that the lockdown has seen the highest level of fitness activity amongst people who have not otherwise been involved in fitness activity. You see more people working out at home, taking walks in the neighborhood to the extent that they can. And health consciousness has driven them to saying any form of comorbidity puts me in greater danger, so let me lose weight, bring my blood sugar under control, etc., etc. I've been talking to people manufacturing running and walking shoes. And can you believe it that the orders they are seeing after the Amazon and others were allowed to start delivering at home are incredible. And they're saying they haven't seen such a spurt. Therefore, personal fitness and sport, I think, is going to be a higher priority for most people who can afford it. And I've heard the other panelists say there are several constraints in this country, but there is no constraint to taking a walk every day.
Yeah.
Going and running in the park or even in the mohalla or even in your compound or wherever else. So I think personal involvement in some form of physical activity is going to be on the rise. I hope that impact lasts. With the fear of COVID receding, that may also recede, but I hope that impact lasts for a lengthy period of time. So merchandise and gear, I don't think will be significantly impacted negatively. In fact, I think it will be impacted positively. Yes, ticketing will be deeply impacted because spectators can't be allowed back into stadiums in a hurry. And whenever they are allowed, there may be social distancing norms of keeping one alternate seat empty, etc. I don't know. I haven't heard too many plans for that. But this is a 6-month, 12-month, 18-month impact. And I'm looking at, it's a 1,000-year-long industry. Why worry about there will be an impact for 6 months, 12 months, we know, on the spectator income, in stadia income, and the concessionaires and all that. Is there going to be a deep impact on sponsorship? Yes, I'm afraid that's going to be the deepest impact for two reasons. One, advertisers have been hit hard in different segments, and their propensity to spend is going to come down. They also expect lower demand for their products because the demand side has been very badly hit due to unemployment, lowered wages, etc., etc. So I think sponsorship will be the last to recover. There's a second reason why sponsorship won't recover that fast in India. Is because it was an overheated market acting on reckless impulses. We all know the Vivo versus Oppo, two sister brands fighting for the IPL sponsorship. Can you imagine two sister brands going and outbidding each other and paying reckless prices? Also, there is, as we have all been noticing, a certain amount of boycott China kind of sentiment building up. In how long that lasts, we'll see. But it may have a short-term impact on the Chinese be wanting to remain less visible in terms of brand visit. So I think sponsorship will be very, very hard hit. I don't think the broadcasting sector will be hit. I think the streams of revenue that come from broadcast for sport are sustainable for two reasons again. One, there are contracts already in place. People can't walk away from those contracts. For example, IPL got postponed this year. When it takes place, whether it takes place in September, October, November, or goes straight to next season, we don't know. But there is no trigger for Star to say that, if you postpone it to October, I don't want it, I won't pay. I don't think there's such a provision in the contract. So the long-term contracts are in place. Those who don't have contracts, and this is happening right now to the world of cricket, this is more there are 6 boards that don't have contracts at the moment. Can you believe it? 6 of the 10 boards currently don't have a broadcaster. They are struggling. Because now the broadcasters are saying, for a long time, you pointed a gun at my head and made me bid at crazy prices. This is my opportunity to squeeze you down. Partly because competition in the market has diminished. There are only 2 broadcasters in India, in sports in India now. And partly because of this COVID phenomena, there is a general tendency to say there's a, the new normal is a term we've all learned. There is now a term that consumers are using called COVID price. It's COVID discount. I've actually heard this term used. Achha, ye kitne ka hai? This is a friend of mine who's a real estate developer. He was telling me, he says, now customers are asking COVID discount kitne hai. So I think the sports industry need not fear, except for those 6 cricket boards. I think the generally sports industry need not fear about any long-term impact on the economics, on the broadcasting rights and the OTT rights side. I don't think there will be a deep impact on the sponsorship side, except for overheated properties like the IPL. But those contracts are already signed for 3 to 5 years. So I think we'll then be past that hump. Yes, gate revenue. So, professional sports teams like the ones in the IPL who get anywhere between 4 to 15 crores of gate revenue every year from the season, they are going to be losing that bunch of money. But in the context of share of broadcasting and sponsorship, right, that's a relatively small segment. I think broadly, I would say merchandising and gear, low impact, possibly even positive impact. Gate revenues, dramatic impact in the next 1 year. Sponsorship, moderate impact in the next 1 year. Broadcasting, minimal impact, except for those 6 cricket boards, the smaller ones, who will struggle to be able to get deals from the Indian marketplace.
Fantastic. You actually, you actually sound quite optimistic, and that'll be music to the ears of people or lots of stakeholders in the.
I am, and I'll tell you that the only way I can add credibility to that is I wish I had not retired from the sports broadcasting industry. Today, I would have liked to be there.
Maybe it's a good sign for you to come back.
No. Offline, I'll tell you what else I'm going to do.
Okay, let me move on quickly to Ashish, who's been waiting to give us his point of view. So Procam is obviously known for the marathons that it has brought to India, and now multiple of them started with Mumbai, and there are several. So do you sense the same kind of optimism that Harish is talking about, or do you see a slightly different scenario, because you are ultimately one discipline based in the marathon sense? I know you'll do other sports also. So is there a kind of a danger that it might be, because suppose athletics is hit? I'm not saying, I'm just giving you a hypothetical scenario. Then maybe it may not be as rosy for you all.
Firstly, a very good evening to everyone, and CII, thank you for having me over. I hope I'm audible, Ayaz.
Yes, you are. You are.
Yeah. Okay. So, the view look is clearly from the view of mass participation sport and distance running. And like you said, we've got properties like the Tata Mumbai Marathon, the Airtel Delhi Half Marathon, the TCS World 10K Bengaluru, and the Tata Steel 25K Kolkata. These are pretty much, the four marquee, running properties that we have in India, which of course has got global participation and so on. So that's just context for people who didn't know that. The backdrop with which, and completely agree with Harish, I think there is a lot of optimism that we have as well. And let me elaborate on that.
It's 17
There
hours.
are two key aspects which is really forming the backdrop from a mass participation sport point of view. One is all about, what we continuously hear about today in the COVID situation about immunity, right? Of course, running does a whole host of things, but what is on the minds of people, a big concern today is how do I build my immunity? And, walking, running, again, Harish touched upon it, are simple to do. You wear a pair of shoes and you're out there, you can do half a kilometer, you can do 20 kilometers. And, as this unlock 1.0 is happening, etc., more and more people we believe will go out there, will take to some level of, fitness. Many of those who may not have thought about it earlier are now forced to go out there. So I just think that, from an immunity point of view, and what is it ultimately? What helps you build strength, your cardiovascular strength, your oxygen capacity, all of this forms immunity, and that's primary in people's minds. The other aspect which, ProCam has focused on over many years is the social impact. I don't know how many of you would know, but, over the last many years, almost 500 crores of charity has been raised via, these four events. In 1 year alone, 70 to 80 crores typically gets raised. And the sort of ways in which, the civil society comes together, there are various NGOs, hundreds of NGOs raising funds, etc. I think, that in this situation also will accelerate. We need to go out there. A lot of us will need to sort of, shell out the money, raise the funds, deploy it, towards various causes, that COVID requires, whether it's livelihood and so on and so forth. So I think that's really the backdrop with which we are seeing this. Clearly, there is a very large population of people. Some researchers say it's 90 million health conscious individuals. Some say it's even more than that. And today we may be relevant, from a running point of view to a subsection of it, which is also about 4 to 5 million people, people that we have a relationship with as ProCam. But clearly the opportunity is to get to that larger universe of people. I think it's really up to sports promoters, and we are just one of them, to be able to think about what are the ways in which we get there. Of course, a lot of conversation in the earlier discussions have been around how do you use technology, how do you use innovation, and a whole host of, those aspects. I just wanted to touch upon one other, point, which is really sponsors and partners. Again, Harish touched upon this. We have been very fortunate to have some of the large organizations backing it. And I think what we are seeing is that they are taking a long-term view. Many of them have taken an 8-10-year view, etc., in terms of building mass participation sport, supporting it, and so on. And even during these times, we haven't seen them sort of be tentative in any way. They stand next to us, we stand next to them. And I think it's really all about going out there and, building strength. So optimism, Ayaz, in one word, is what it is.
Okay, great. I think that's true. People who really understand the business of sports so thoroughly, who are actually expressing optimism that, even I'm beginning to share it now. So great. Let's hear what Jaidev Mahapatra has to say. Jaidev, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Sorry, I couldn't see you on the. Here you are. You had vanished for a while. So do you share this optimism? Now, I must tell you why I'm asking this question repeatedly. Because Harish mentioned that, for instance, in cricket, and especially in the BCCI and the IPL, the deals have been sealed. There's not much that can be lost because of COVID-19. Even if the IPL is not played, the broadcast rights have to be paid, etc., etc. Where the marathons are concerned, ProCam International has got long-term signings with the sponsors. It's not for 1 year or 2 years. But do you see pressure coming on events and sports where these long-term deals may not be in place? The immediate impact, which Harish touched upon actually, is in the sponsorship. Because you go to brands or to product leaders and say, we want you to support this sport, and they say, boss, we have not made any money this year. How can we support you? And therefore the sport comes under duress. Do you see that scenario at all?
I do see the same scenario. However, I believe with the sports fraternity going back to the game, we have seen Bundesliga started yesterday. There was a match in Vietnam where 30,000 spectators have come back and saw that match in the stadium. I believe things will soon go back to the normal, and we will fight back. All the sports fraternity, they have cut down on the salaries. The clubs have cut down on the salaries. The big players have cut down on their salaries. Everyone is getting back to a situation where the whole loss is being divided across the sports fraternity. It's not just the clubs who are suffering. The players have been suffered. The sponsors have suffered. The whole ecosystem has suffered. But everyone is working constructively to bring back the whole system and ensure that the sports get back to the same arena where we can have players playing on the ground and we have spectators on the ground. However, I would say there are certain things which needs to be taken as practical steps. We have to potentially play for a while without fans, and we have to be prepared with systems which can ensure that there are no further outbreaks which can create crisis again. We have to have a comeback plan. We have to have a response system where we can immediately respond to any kind of outbreak and recover from that. And we have to have training methodologies where the contact system is avoided. It will be a challenge for contact sports like boxing, wrestling, and other such sports, but sports like badminton, tennis, such other games would still thrive. There will be a challenge with regards to building our relationship with our partners. While the partners are facing a crunch with regards to where they will generate funds if there is no demand, and how will they fund a club like Barcelona, or how will they fund a player like Ronaldo or Messi? But yes, tomorrow, if you have to do business in sports, and if on the grassroots level there is demand for equipment and there is demand for sporting activities across cities, across villages, across schools, there will be demand for that product. It cannot just vanish. And people will follow something which goes into ads. People will want something which has the endorsement of Messi or a Ronaldo. So it's not going to vanish. Yes, it will slow down a bit for a while, but it will recover fast. I don't feel it's going to die down. But
Okay.
yes, everyone has to support.
So, Harry, I've got a question to you, and which is located in the IPL, because you did mention specifically the IPL. You gave that as an example. Now, there's a lot of talk that, not a lot of talk, there are lots of moves to ensure that IPL 2020 is not scrapped, that, some one way or the other it is played, even at the cost of the T20 World Championship. So, how, because expected losses to the cricket world, so to speak, if the IPL doesn't take place, is maybe between 3,500 to 4,000 crore. So, how do you see the scenario? It just makes the Indian cricket establishment so much more powerful, and therefore, do you see a skew happening there? Just to one-sided the seesaw?
Okay, I think you have two questions rolled into one.
Yes. Yes.
What's the economic impact of the IPL being held or not being held? And in either scenario, how does it skew the balance of power of the Indian cricket establishment vis-a-vis the world? So I'd like to preface that by my long-standing conviction that the Indian Cricket Board derives its power from the Indian cricket fan. If the fan didn't exist, the sport would not exist. The money comes from the broadcasters and the sponsors because 1.4 billion fans follow the sport. So therefore, the power is actually the fans' power. Tomorrow, if the fans were to desert the sport, the Indian Cricket Board would become like the Bangladesh Cricket Board or the Pakistan Cricket Board. It's as simple as that. It's not something that the administrators easily understand, but that's the reality of it. So they're riding off the fans, the popularity of the sport. Now, if the IPL is held, to my mind, it won't be business as normal because the sponsorship side will be hit. The teams normally do 1 to 3 year deals with these sponsorships. And even if there are 3 year deals in place, sponsors could cite the fact that, listen, I am a sponsor who's a hot weather product like Pepsi or Coca-Cola, and in November, I'm not interested. So there will be some renegotiations that will take place on the sponsorship side. Obviously, ticketing, we don't know by by October, November, if the fans will be allowed back into the stadiums or not, and what numbers they'll be allowed. The broadcast deal, I don't think will be impacted. I mean, that's my view, that I don't think Star is going to be too fussed about the broadcast deal. It will stand the way it is. If it is not held, there is no loss of 3,500 crores. I'd like to dispel the notion that there's a loss of 3,500 crores, because there is a loss of income, but there are no costs against that. So, for example, the broadcaster won't pay the whatever 3,000 crores or 2,500 crores this license fees. So there's a loss of income for the cricket board. In turn, they distribute, I think, whatever 60 or 80% to the teams, who in turn spend money on the players and the staging of the matches. So, as I think Jaydev pointed out, loss of income gets spread across the entire value chain. The players don't get paid salaries for the season. The TV production company doesn't get paid for the production. So everybody has less income in their hands. And for some people, it is a genuine loss. If a player is not paid a salary, that is his loss, because he's got no cost against it.
Yeah.
But for a broadcaster, the loss of income is offset by the loss of by no cost being there. He doesn't have to pay out money. If he's going to earn 2,500 crores and pay 2,200 crores out, if he doesn't pay the 2,200 crores, he doesn't make the 2,500 crores. So there's actually pretty small notional loss for them. If it is held, you're dead right, Ayaz, and that's a phenomenally insightful question. If it is held, it actually increases the balance of power in favor of the Indian cricket establishment, because the T20 World Cup would have to be scrapped, and therefore distribution of those revenues to the 10 boards will not happen. We all know that 3 boards are tottering on the verge of bankruptcy at the moment, so they will be pushed deeper into financial crisis. So yes, if it is held, there are two impacts of that. The Indian ecosystem will reasonably flourish, minus some sponsorship segments that will take a hit, and some gate money will take a hit. And if it is held, it will increase the power of the Indian cricket establishment. If it is not held, then I can't see the T20 World Cup being held and the IPL not being. See what I mean?
Okay, got it.
I'm just saying that in the politics of the world game, I think that's a unlikely possibility. But who knows? Strange things have known to have happened in the world of cricket. So we'll see how the drama unfolds.
So what I think some questions are being kind of curated for you guys, but we have to move on to the next panel. So
all right. So we'll take the questions at the end of all the 3 panel
you have to curate the question and keep them for the panelists.
Right.
But we need to, because we've got 3 panels, so we need to.
All right. So thank you, Mr. Memon and speakers, for sharing some very interesting perspectives on what are the stark issues facing the revenue models for the sports industry, and also what are the initiatives or measures that can turn around or reduce the economic impact that the industry is facing currently. So with this, we will now begin our second panel discussion, which is on the topic of recovery strategies for the sports industry. And this is being planned by our speakers. A very warm welcome to our speakers for this panel discussion. We have with us Mr. Sabah Karim, former Indian cricketer and General Manager, BCCI. Mr. Mukul Chaudhary, CEO, Jamshedpur Football Club and Chief of Sports Excellence Centers from Tata Steel. And last but not least, we have Ms. Duti Chand, noted Olympian and Indian professional sprinter. Once again, a very warm welcome to you. And I will once again request Mr. Ayaz to kindly moderate our second panel discussion. Over to you.
So, welcome Sabah, Duti, and Mr. Mukul Chaudhary. I'll start with Sabah because we just had Harish Thawani telling us, the nuts and bolts of how, in a sense, the IPL functions and what COVID-19 could mean to it, and what the balance of power of cricket worldwide could be if the IPL is indeed held this year. So, Sabah, recovery strategies already somewhere, news comes out that so much loss is happening, or the loss of income is happening, and therefore BCCI wants to ensure that you don't lose money, because the richest board, but it doesn't hurt to get even richer than what you are. So So how do you foresee going ahead? I'll just put this in context because international cricket is about to begin in month of July with West Indies and Pakistan to tour England. So obviously everybody's waiting in anticipation to see how that transpires and then try and speed ahead. Of course, COVID-19 permitting. But in terms of the BCCI, how do you, because you've lost almost half the year, and now there's the other half of the year, which also includes getting a window for the IPL, without which you would lose income of about 3,500 to 4,000 crore.
Yes, thank you so much, and thanks to CII for the invite. It's been wonderful and quite insightful to hear all the panelists speak their mind on future of sports. You see, as if you notice the end of the last domestic season, we missed out on some portion of men's domestic cricket, as well as the senior women tournament plus the under-19 women tournament. So in any case, we have been impacted because of this COVID-19 in the past season also. But going forward, there are no definite answers at this stage, as you can understand, why. But it is heartening to note that cricket is about to start. If not in India, at least there are other country boards who are very keen to start cricket. For instance, ECB is very keen to start not only men cricket, but I'm in touch with them for women cricket tours also. For instance, Indian women's side was supposed to travel to UK in July. Now they're looking at creating a window in September to accommodate us. So that is extremely positive and very heartening to note. And they're talking about securing a bioenvironment kind of a venue, maybe restricting all the matches to 3 or 4 venues, where some kind of bubble can be created and safety can be paramount for all the players. So that is extremely good to know. Now, in terms of IPL, I really can't comment much on that because, as you would know, it is up to the IPL governing council and the office bearers to figure that out. But I'm sure they are working very hard to ensure some kind of window is created to accommodate IPL 2020. And if you go by some of the headlines which I have read from the players' perspective, they're also very keen to play the IPL. So if T20 World Cup does not take place, then I'm sure we will be able to manage a window where we can host the IPL. I don't know to what extent, how many number of matches that may come down, but hopefully IPL should be held, not only for the fans, but also the players. And I think Harish touched on this subject some time back, that players need to be paid. And I think that is such a great platform, not only for international cricketers, but also for our domestic cricketers. For a domestic player who plays only Ranji Trophy, for him to earn about 50 to 60 lakhs is phenomenal growth for that kind of a player in terms of his finances. So that's the way we are looking at. But more importantly, not only IPL, but we're also looking to start international cricket and domestic cricket, because that's kind of a bedrock for Indian cricket in general. So there are a number of tours lined up. For instance, India is supposed to travel to Australia to play the test series there. There are a lot of discussions taking place, where to have it, how many test matches to have it. And in terms of domestic cricket, we have such a massive and a robust domestic operations. We're just waiting for it to start. Then there is a strong possibility that we may have to cut down the number of matches if you organize the last 2 seasons. For all the panelists and the viewers who have logged in, we organized close to about 2,000 domestic matches. So we may not be in a position to conduct so many matches given the circumstances. But hopefully we will try and pull in as much as possible. And for this to happen, we need a lot of support from the state associations, plus from the hospitality sector, to create those kind of venues where we can ensure that matches can be played in a very safe kind of an environment. So hopefully, I think we are very positive that things should start soon, so that cricket can run its course.
And you can give me a very brief reply, because I didn't want to ask Harish this because I knew you were on the panel. One, is the IPL tournament insured? So in case if it doesn't take place, is there a recovery of some loss by the and the other is, one second. Yeah. The other is, what happens to the players? Do they still get their money even if there's no IPL? I mean, because nobody had even thought of COVID-19.
To be very honest, Ayaz, I don't look after the IPL team as such. That's all handled by IPL Governing Council.
Okay.
So I think the office bearers will be in a far better position to understand this. But I mean, whatever I've gathered, I'm sure the players are kind of insured. They're insured for injury, but I don't know how you look at COVID-19. If it is a force majeure kind of a situation, I'm sure that the players would be insured and they would get the money.
Okay. So that's that's interesting. So the calendar may not be as full as last year because obviously we lost a lot of days. But the BCCI believes that it can, across the board, including women's cricket, junior cricket, under 19, whatever, we'll have enough action going on once sport resumes. That's great to hear.
Yeah, because also as let me finish this. That there are a number of events lined up. For instance, the Women Under 19 World Cup is coming up for the first time in Bangladesh in January. Then we have the Women's World Cup, 50-over World Cup coming up in February. So there are so many events coming up. So for that, we also need to prepare. So there are a number of tours lined up, number of series which we're supposed to host in India. So all that is in the pipeline, and there's a massive spectrum of cricket matches that we are supposed to conduct, including India A matches, our under-19 setup, for our women India A teams, the national team. So yeah, I mean, fingers crossed, we should get something on board soon.
Great, Sabha. Thanks. Let me move on to Mr. Mukul Chaudhary, CEO, Jamshedpur Football Club and Chief of Sports Excellence Center, Tata Steel. I can't see his picture, but is he there? Mr. Mukul Chaudhary, are you there? I can't seem to, maybe the connection is a little weak. So let me move on to
Mr. Mukul Chaudhary has just come. I can see his video.
Okay, because he's not on my screen.
I can see him.
Yeah, but can you hear me?
Mr. Chaudhary, can you unmute your button?
Yeah, you can go ahead, sir, Mr. Chaudhary.
Yeah.
Great.
Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you, Mr. Menon. I think it's a great opportunity for me to be here, and thanks to CII for having me here. So yes, sir, please. I can hear you. Yeah.
We've had Sabha Karim, who's in charge of operations in the BCCI, telling us what their strategy is for cricket, the big sport in India or the biggest sport. Now, how do you locate yourself in this paradigm of recovery post-COVID? We are hopeful, keeping fingers crossed, that in the next 3-4 weeks, things will start becoming far more normal than they have been for the last 6 months. But what's your strategy going to be?
So one thing is very clear. This is a very exceptional year, so to say, and it's going to hit everybody, particularly as Mr. Thawani was mentioning. I think sponsorship, gate receipts are surely going to take a hit. Unlike cricket, football is still about gathering its audience. You still have some good numbers coming only for few games and few teams, so to say, in certain pockets, be it Calcutta, Kerala, and Goa, but not all over otherwise. But one thing is there, we are surely going to take a big hit as far as sponsorship is concerned.
Yeah.
I think it's a good opportunity for all of us, rather. I firmly believe, before I say this, that this is going to be a temporary phase, and this is just about a matter of time. It's another few weeks, and as you rightly put, or maybe another few months, so to say, and we're all coming back to so-called normal or a different sporting era altogether. But having said that, one is very confident that the sporting events will happen, and we'll take this opportunity to typically rationalize and also optimize on our costs. So there are many decisions or things that we were doing differently, or there were areas where we thought that there could be a better opportunity to optimize or maybe rationalize, rather. That's the better word. And one would take this opportunity to do all that and try to bring about more cost efficiencies and see to it that not necessarily cutting salaries of players, but otherwise the operation cost, wherever one can leverage and figure out whatever best can be done to see that the sport benefits more than the overall experience, with also optimizing experience.
Let me just ask you a supplementary question here. Is there a fear, and I don't mean only in football, but other sports also, that when things resume or start coming back to normal, what might happen is a lot of the sponsorship or the money will gravitate towards the biggest sport in the country, and therefore the other sports might languish. Now, I'm not saying forever, but for a fair while, and that could severe constraints.
It will be. People will, sponsors will obviously prioritize. And if I would be on the sponsor side, I would see to it that if I have, now instead of 100 rupees, if I have 60, I would rather put it in the places where it's going to earn me more eyeballs. And therefore, I would typically put my money there. Having said that, everybody who's into the sport or everybody who's there in participating in this game typically has a long-term view. So I think it's about letting this time pass, seeing to it that what best we can do. And it's important that we conduct these events.
Yeah.
It's important to have this continuity. It's for our own recovery. And even if we are into football, so even if I advocate football, I would say it is very important for us that IPL happens, because it will set the ball rolling for all the sports, because that's where the sports appetite per se would come in. And I think I think it will happen. But that's my view on it.
No, but that's fantastic. That's a selfless way of looking at it, and perhaps I think you're right. Absolutely. So let's, we'll come back. Either I'll come back to you, or maybe we'll have some questions posed for you. But let me move quickly to see Chand, because we've got a third panel also after this, and we have to get as many views as possible. Is Duti there? I'm not seeing her on the screen. Hey, Duti?
Yes, she's there, sir.
She's there, right? I can't see her, but I hope she can hear me. आप सुन सकती हैं मुझे?
Yeah, she's there.
Yeah, I can see her, sir.
So हमने तो बात की, with administrators and with people who are on the business side of sports. आप तो एक participant हैं, आप athlete हैं. तो recovery in post COVID, एक तो COVID की वजह से clamp down ऐसा हो गया था, lockdown के सबको घर बैठना पड़ा. और हालांकि ये सही है कि आप घर पे जिमिंग कर सकते हैं अगर आपके पास हो इक्विपमेंट वगैरह वगैरह, लेकिन कंपेटिटिव प्रैक्टिस जो है या जो सीरियस प्रैक्टिस है उसके लिए काफी अंकुश लगा हुआ था. तो पोस्ट कोविड सिनेरियो आप किस तरह से देख रहे हैं? क्या आपके लिए ये एक अपहिल टास्क हो गया है, बहुत काफी समय का नुकसान हो गया है, एक अपॉर्चुनिटी, जैसे ओलंपिक्स कैंसिल हो गई, अब नया दूसरा मौका आएगा 1 साल बाद. 1 साल जो होता है एक एथलीट की जिंदगी में, खास करके जो डिसिप्लिन में आप है, बहुत लंबा समय है. तो आप किस तरह से देखती हैं?
सभी को मेरी तरफ से नमस्कार. बेसिकली देखूंगी तो कोविड-19 के वजह से बहुत कुछ लॉस हुआ मेरा. एक तो मेहनत जो किया था वो भी लॉस हुआ, इसके साथ साथ जो पैसा भी इन्वेस्ट किया था ओलंपिक के लिए, टोक्यो ओलंपिक के लिए, वो भी मेरा लॉस हुआ. बेसिकली देखेंगे तो इस ईयर में टोक्यो ओलंपिक सबसे बड़ा मेगा कंपटीशन था मेरे लिए. लॉकडाउन के वजह से वो कंपटीशन भी पोस्टपोन हो गया और घर में भी 2 महीना बैठना पड़ा. इसमें बहुत दिक्कत पहुंचा मुझे. बेसिकली देखेंगे तो जो कंपटीशन के लिए मैं तैयारी कर रही थी लास्ट अक्टूबर मंथ से, वो सारा मेहनत बेकार गया. जो जितना स्पीड पकड़ना था बॉडी में, वो स्पीड जितना कोशिश करे थे लाने के लिए, वो सारा नीचे चला गया. एक तो ट्रेनिंग का इफेक्ट गिरा. दूसरा जो ओलंपिक का होपफुल था कि मैं इस बार ओलंपिक जाऊंगी, देश के लिए नाम रोशन करूंगी, वो ओलंपिक के भी पोस्टपोन हो गया. एक तो बेनिफिट मिला कि घर में बैठ के थोड़ा कुछ फैमिली को टाइम दे पाई मैंने. लेकिन एक तरह देखेंगे तो जो एथलेट जिम जा रही थी और ट्रेनिंग करने के लिए जा रही थी, वो सब घर में बैठना पड़ा. बेसिकली मेरी बारे में बोलूंगी तो मुझे ट्रेनिंग का इफेक्ट के वजह मेरी बॉडी बहुत पेनफुल रहा. लगभग 10-15 दिन बहुत पेनफुल रहा मेरा बॉडी, क्योंकि पूरा जो मसल खोले था वो पूरा टाइट हो गया. लॉकडाउन के वजह घर में बैठना पड़ा. मेरे पास CII यूनिवर्सिटी था, इसलिए मैं बीच बीच में जाके हमारा जो क्रिकेट ग्राउंड है उसमें रनिंग कर रही थी. मैंने कभी कभी जिम का यूज कर रही थी, क्योंकि मैं अकेली थी. जिस एथलीट के पास कोई जिम नहीं है, कोई ग्राउंड नहीं है, कोई छोटा मोटा डंबल भी साथ में नहीं है, तो इन लोग को बहुत भारी पड़ा, क्योंकि घर में बैठ के कुछ भी एक्सरसाइज नहीं कर पाई. मेरा बॉडी को फिटनेस रखने के लिए मैं घर में भी थोड़ा बहुत काम किया. मैंने सफाई वगैरह काम किया, घर का खाना बनाने का काम, बर्तन धोना, सारा छोटा मोटा काम करके मेरे बॉडी को फिटनेस रखा था मैंने. अभी जो भी स्टेडियम ओपन हो गया, इसी ओपन के वजह फिर जाके मैं ट्रेनिंग कर रहा हूँ अभी. लेकिन एक चीज जो फाइनेंस सपोर्ट था मेरे साथ में, जैसे पूमा का ब्रांड एम्बेसडर हूँ मैं, अभी पूमा का स्पॉन्सर था, उड़ीसा स्टेट गवर्नमेंट का भी स्पॉन्सर था मेरे साथ. लेकिन इस ईयर के लिए जो पैसा सैंक्शन हुआ था वो तो अभी खर्च हो गया. लेकिन नेक्स्ट ओलंपिक जब होगा तो इसके लिए मुझे पैसा कौन देगा, कैसे मैं प्रिपरेशन करूंगी, वही इसको लेकर अभी मैं टेंशन में हूँ कि नेक्स्ट ईयर ओलंपिक होगा तो इसके लिए भी प्रिपरेशन करना पड़ेगा. और प्रिपरेशन के लिए जो मैं टीम बना के ट्रेनिंग कर रही थी, मेरी कोच, असिस्टेंट कोच, फिजियोथेरेपी, मसाजर, सबको लेके मैं ट्रेनिंग करती हूँ. अभी वो सारी दूसरी जगह में है, लेकिन वो लोग तो पेमेंट तो लेना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि वो लोग तो मेरे साथ काम करते हैं. लेकिन अभी भी लॉकडाउन है, वो साथ में ट्रेनिंग नहीं कर रहे, फिर भी वो लोग को पेमेंट देना पड़ रहा है मुझे, क्योंकि नहीं देंगे तो वो लोग का फैमिली दिक्कत पहुंच जाएगा. तो एग्रीमेंट भी किया मैंने 2 साल ओलंपिक तक, तो इनको पेमेंट देना पड़ रहा है. तो ऐसा बहुत तकलीफ हो रहा है. फिर भी उम्मीद है ये कोरोना वायरस जल्दी निकल जाएगा, तो फिर से स्पोर्ट्स शुरुआत होगा. तो सारे प्लेयर लोग को भी बेनिफिट मिलेगा, क्योंकि इसी कोरोना वायरस से जो प्लेयर एथलेट अच्छा परफॉर्मेंस कर रही थी, तो इन लोग का तो पूरा डाउन हो गया। और जो स्पॉन्सरशिप है वो भी स्पॉन्सरशिप भी नेक्स्ट 2 महीने के बाद शायद चला जाएगा, क्योंकि स्पॉन्सरशिप जो नहीं रहेगा तो एथलीट का कोई इनकम नहीं है। और जब कंपटीशन होता था, मेडल लेकर आते थे, तो बड़ा बड़ा फंक्शन को बुलाते थे, तो प्राइज मनी पॉकेट मनी देते थे। लेकिन अभी तो कंपटीशन जब नहीं होगा तो एक एथलीट का इनकम पूरा जीरो हो जाएगा, क्योंकि कोई कंपटीशन नहीं होने के वजह कोई फंक्शन को नहीं बुलाएंगे, कोई आर्ट वगैरह नहीं आएगा, तो इसमें एथलीट को बहुत लॉस होगा।
पर दूसरी, आपने एसोसिएशन के साथ एथलेटिक्स फेडरेशन ऑफ इंडिया से बातचीत की है, स्पोर्ट्स मिनिस्ट्री से, इंडियन ओलंपिक एसोसिएशन से, क्योंकि ये आप जैसे एथलीट के लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, क्योंकि अगर ट्रेनिंग फिर से शुरू करना है तो उसके लिए पैसे या रिसोर्सेज की जरूरत है, और वो स्पॉन्सरशिप अगर नहीं है तो कहाँ से, कहीं से तो आना है ना। तो आपने फेडरेशन से बात किया है?
बेसिकली देखेंगे तो एथलेटिक फेडरेशन ऑफ इंडिया मुझे तो कुछ स्पॉन्सर नहीं देते, मेरी उड़ीसा गवर्नमेंट मुझे स्पॉन्सर करते हैं। अभी जितना पैसा दिया है, अभी तो इस साल अभी ट्रेनिंग चल रहा है, नेक्स्ट तो अभी प्लानिंग बनाना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि ओलंपिक का कोई गारंटी नहीं है अभी तक कि जुलाई में होगा या नहीं होगा, क्योंकि अभी भी IOC का मीटिंग चल रही है, इसको कैंसिल करेंगे या कंटिन्यू करेंगे। तो अभी तो जो दिसंबर ओलंपिक तक जो पैसा सैंक्शन हुआ था उसी पैसा मेरे पास में है, इसमें अभी ट्रेनिंग चल रहा है। तो नेक्स्ट ओलंपिक जब कंफर्म हो जाए कि हाँ जुलाई में होगा करके, फरवरी में पता चल जाएगा शायद, फरवरी में जब वो कंपटीशन इंडिया में शुरू हो जाएगा, तो उस टाइम में जो चीज मुझे जरूरत होगा, मेरा पूरा उम्मीद है कि मेरा जो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट है मुझे जो स्पॉन्सर दे रहा है वो इसको कंटिन्यू रखेंगे। तो मुझे हेल्प मिल जाएगा जो ओलंपिक आएगा, टोक्यो ओलंपिक नेक्स्ट ईयर में, इसकी प्रिपरेशन के लिए।
तो मेरी दरख्वास्त है ओडिशा गवर्नमेंट से, जो आपको सपोर्ट कर रही है, बहुत अच्छी बात है, लेकिन शायद उनको स्पोर्ट्स मिनिस्ट्री से भी बात करनी चाहिए, क्योंकि एज एन इंडिविजुअल एथलीट अगर आप बात करेंगे और स्टेट गवर्नमेंट बात करती है तो फिर उसका असर, उसका दबाव, उसका वजन कुछ और होता है। तो और कुछ सवाल अगर आएंगे आपके लिए दूसरी, तो आप हमारे साथ रहिए। अब मुझे क्विकली अब थर्ड पैनल पे जाना है, क्योंकि टाइम भी हमारा जो है वो कम है। तो कैन वी जस्ट स्टार्ट दिस थर्ड पैनल?
Sure. So thanks, dear speakers, for your notable insights on the possible recovery strategies and what can be done currently, short-term, and also the long-term measures. So welcome to the third and, of course, the final panel discussion, which is on the topic of retaining sports businesses. Our eminent speakers for the session are Mr. Murli Karthik, former international cricketer. Unfortunately, Mr. Karthik is unable to access the video, but his audio is on, and we can assure that we can hear him, and as well as scores of his fans who are waiting to hear him. We also have Dr. Shilpa Desai, internationally acclaimed health psychologist and wellness expert, and Dr. A.B. Subaya, former Indian hockey goalkeeper and coach. A very warm welcome to our dear panelists. May I once again request our moderator to kindly moderate this panel. Over to you.
Thank you. I think Murli Karthik has ducked putting his video on.
We did see him in the beginning, but he's having some technical glitch. Oh, yes, he's back.
We won't let him get away because he's still there on audio. We won't let him get away.
We can see his picture, sir. He's
Yeah,
visible.
we can
See his picture. I can't. So anyway, since he's there, and this is a very interesting panel, I've got some leading questions to ask Dr. Shilpa Desai also, and of course Mr. Subaya. Oh, but there he is, Murli Karthik. I can see him.
Yeah. His video is on.
Yeah, his video is on. So retaining sports business, it's a kind of an offbeat question or this thing for you, Karthik, but Murli, but I think that you have now straddled so many areas or aspects of cricket, from being a player at some stage, not some stage, but predominantly now you're in the media, you're doing commentary, etc. So how has it been for you? Because you have made a shift in becoming not now, but for the last 5-6 years, in becoming a professional associated with the sport, and therefore to keep yourself also alive. COVID has kind of put everything in a standstill for the last 3 months. But conceivably, if it continues for another 3 months, 6 months, who knows? What happens? So how are you doing something to reskill yourself? Are you looking at some, how do you remain part of this industry and keep yourself engaged, not just about the financial part, but also the mental part of it?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening once again to Ayaz and everybody out there. It's an interesting discussion. I asked the most important thing is that for me, post 2014, when I called it quits from all formats, I was at a crossroad, and I think that happens to every cricketer because, or every sports person. You're all skilled in a different way, certain people, and people need to understand that in sports, some of them are more educated, some of them are not as educated because from a very young age, all you have done is play the sport. So once you get to the crossroad, then you are trying to figure out what you want to do next. For me, thankfully, as I was coming to the close of my cricket in all formats, I had this avenue, which was broadcasting, which I'd been doing for a while. There are others who get into administration. There are others who get into coaching, and that's how you keep yourself involved. I think there are very few cricketers who get into business or something like that. You know, COVID has actually changed. COVID-19 has changed everything for everyone. As a broadcaster right now, till the time any team, if they don't play the game, we're just sitting at home twiddling our thumbs. Apart from that, as somebody who's played the game, you're also into mentoring. You're also into helping young players with their game as and when they need. You do end up writing articles and talking to different people. But again, that has taken a huge beating. I'm sure that you being part of the journalism industry, there are lots of journalists who have lost their jobs during these last 2 months. There's been a massive hit in every newspaper, every organization, media organization. People are losing jobs, and also the ones who are keeping their jobs, they are actually under a lot of pressure to create a lot of content. So right now, anybody who wants to speak to you, anybody who wants to do something with you, you're not even in a position to say that, listen, we charge money for it, because that's the kind of situation everybody is in. These are times where I think as a journalist or not as a journalist, as a commentator, as a media person right now, it's just about living off your savings right now, and hopefully things do change for the better for every commentator, every broadcaster as the times go by, because we don't know what's going to happen. Again, you're talking about biosecure environment, people being quarantined, players being quarantined for games, so you don't know what's going to happen, whether it's going to be off-tube commentary, whether you're sitting at home and commentating, whether you're going to the ground and commentating. Nobody knows the number of people who are going to be used. So it's all up in the air, so to say. For me personally speaking, as I said, I am not fazed about too much, because once I got into broadcast, I realized that I was not part of the rat race, and I'm not going to fuss myself over whether I get a job, whether I do something. So I've braced myself for it. Golf keeps me going and keeps me very sane, apart from doing other things in life. Not that we are getting to play too much golf, but apart from that, you're just waiting for things to unfold. That's where everything lies right now. When sport is going to come back, and when mainstream sport is going to allow you to come back onto the field. So you have a few skills, but at the moment everything is redundant.
Thank you. As always, so candid and upfront and forthright, which is actually your strongest suit, strongest selling card, calling card, and you won't be suppressed or put down for long. But let me move to Dr. Shilpa Desai, and I thought this session panel discuss the session on retaining sports businesses. I'll give it a little tweak, and let's look at the more societal dimension and the individual and personal dimensions as to how the world will emerge in the post-COVID-19 age. So, Dr. Shilpa Desai, without much ado, you wanted to at the start come in with some points of view, which I had said about kids and whether they'll get.
It's like
it would be my biggest worry, frankly.
Absolutely.
I assume, but at the grassroots level, because the biggest worry that parents have today is that my kids should not suffer.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, CII, for having me here. The technical support. Thank you so much for technical team. And Ayaz and all eminent speaker over here, and I've been really thrilled to listening to them all. And I was summing up that what is exactly the totality of it. And health psychology is something a very new term, Ayaz, because the people are not practicing. There is hardly anyone you will find practicing health psychology. So it's like generally, if you say the world scenario, I would say this: yes, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That scenario is there right now. whole world is our family and we have to think in a multiple dimensions. The sports industry I see in a very positive way, because sports people are always an inspiration to the common people to look upon. In this situation, when the moral is down of the common people, there are three layers of people: a lower people, mediocre, and the higher one. So the sports people are touching everyone. And when they are the inspiration, they are with the 360-degree with the physical and mental capacity. So I see it like the sports people here right now, maybe they're lacking with the mental support here. Right now, I feel the strategy, what we need to build up, we don't have the scientific support on the mental health leverage. And there, I think generally, Dute has said that she is having lots of pain in the body, but she has the cumulative pain. She doesn't know that exactly what is it. So there are certain, the technology has gone so far in science and sports science that we can actually take the test weekly and we can support the entire fraternity of the sports with the online media. And with the Jaydev Mahapatra has really been taken up the right cue. I have been from last 30 years into the industry of health psychology. And as a sports scientist, I have worked on a quite grassroots level on 1,000 children. I have worked, Jay. And there I have already predicted that 50 years back, we have decided our future on COVID 2019. And if you say 2002 and 2012, where certain this pulmonary functions deterioration has been already shown. And it has started when the malnourishment has started. So here, the long-term strategy, as right Harish has said, and other people have said, the long-term strategy, and we have to start now. And Jay, absolutely at grassroots level, like we have certain sign, we have the other body, state level body of the sports, but there is no such connectivity of, I think the Bal Krida Bhavan we have with the every state. We have 220 Krida Prabodhini. And if I say with the Krida Prabodhini, we take up sign, we can take up the villages around there, we can take up the children from there, we can connect through the school to Krida Prabodhini. And definitely there are long way to go with this. So I feel in COVID-19, we need to think in a both the way. Our players who are right now at home, they should do their inventory of mental health inventory, which will sum up with their physiological aspects, because the muscles are directly connected to the neurons. If they, like, we have an adrenaline rush when the sports are coming up, when the World Cup is coming up, any IPL is coming up. So when the player doesn't know that we are training for what is coming next, and they lost that audience thrill, which is on the ground when they are playing. So absolutely their unconscious mind is not releasing that hormones which they need to build up their muscles. It's an other way around science. So I would say here on the national platform that when physiologically, it's a mind and body. When the body is down, we have to take up with the mind. So we can train. A mind is not only for depression, stress, and talking negative. Mind is all about training your body physiologically. So when you are at home, you can actually train and give the command to your weak areas and strong area, and you can train it very, very well. So like Duty is facing a problem of pain, where she can take a PES test she can take. And definitely I ask, it's an amazing science, sports science, which we are not using at the fullest in India. I was a mentor at Portugal and Spain to the soccer players. And with the Rush Academy, I'm very strongly associated from last 12 years. And we have given an amazing result. Right now, Monali Jadhav, archer, we have given, and when she won the 9 gold medal on target archery, we have trained her in, I think, in a 2 month. It is all between mind to the body. So I feel that COVID-19 strategy, we need to take up as a wholesome, and the sports people, we all are looking up. So I think they need the better support right now.
Okay. But that's very interesting what you mentioned, because obviously sport, while it is a physical activity and we play it on the field, but what goes on in the mind perhaps determines how well you'll play. And I'm sure that everybody who's here from the world of sports will agree to that. Let me move on to Dr. A.B. Subaya, former India hockey goalkeeper and coach. Is he there? I don't see him. Is he there, Mr. Subaya? Dr. Subaya?
Yeah,
Hello?
you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah.
So welcome to this webinar. There you are. Yes.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Very quick question to you on based along these lines. For the last panel, I've kept the issue of personalities, posing or coping with COVID-19 from the mental aspect and from from a societal and social aspect. Now, you as a coach, do you foresee any problems emerging with getting youngsters onto the field? Do you anticipate that at all? Or do you think, as a lot of people are very bullish and they say that once the lockdown lifted, everybody will be quickly onto the fields? I have a sense of apprehension about it, but I'm not qualified to speak. Dr. Shilpa Desai is there, you are there. How do you assess the situation now going ahead as a coach?
Yeah, surely, as actually it's not very easy when you take a sport like hockey. We have a lot of contact and tackling, everything, whatever you said. So it's not easy for us straight away the hockey players to come into the field. Moreover, unless unless they find a vaccination for this COVID, and it's very difficult because whatever you might say, because you won't get a 80 or 100% output of the game if you don't find a proper remedy for this COVID-19, because whatever the players in the field may be, because back of the mind, this is one of the thing, because hockey is a very contact sport. When you come into the tackling and the defenders, they play very close hockey and they breathe heavily, they run a lot, and it is not a very safe sport at present to play. Because now we started our national teams training because they were preparing very well for the Olympics. After that, they had a European tour they supposed to go, but that could not happen because the Olympics also postponed. Now keep the senior players and the motivation of all these players in the same level where they were preparing well for Olympics. It is really difficult to get them back to motivate. I think once they say the playing a sport is very safe, you can play you can give your all out 100% for a game, then only you can start motivating them, because otherwise it's very difficult because to come out in this level and put your 100% on field.
So just very quickly, and you can give me a brief answer. Your experience with, I don't know what age group you are coaching, but does it also include juniors?
No, I was a player. After playing this, I was also went on the broadcasting like Murli and all that. Later, I was coaching for the Indian men's team, women's team. Now I am the national selector and I am the administrator in Hockey Karnataka. I am the secretary and I do multitasking now. So, and I was with the national team at present. So as some time in the coaching. So that is the perspective I'm talking.
But just to speculate, do you think that parents and others would be a little cautious, a little worried, a little concerned now?
Yeah, they're conscious because we also sport, because I belong to Coog, where I have in the summers we have a summer coaching camps, everything. This time there was so much of worry about among the parents. They not let the children come to the ground at all. They even talking to us like not to conduct any tournament or anything in near future unless it is very safe. So that's why the Hockey India also there postponed all the national level, under 19, all the tournaments to the next year only, not this year.
Okay. I have a quick question for Karthik also. So we've got the series coming up in England, West Indies, and but one of the people who's raised a little bit of a red flag of jumping into it cavalierly is Rahul Dravid. In one of the interactions that he's had with the media, he says you may have a biosecure bubble in which you play, but what happens on the second day or the third day of a test match, somebody tests positive for whatever reason? Do you cancel that match and that series? And how do you go further, in that series? So he says, yes, he says, don't be cavalier about it. You have to be, err on the side of caution rather than adventure.
I would say the same as well, Ayaz. And quite a few things of late have actually piqued my interest. In fact, the same thing about the saliva not being used. And over here, I would also like to ask Mr. Subaya as well. See, when you're trying to bring sport back, they're going to do a lot of testing, which means that people who are going to be COVID negative are going to be coming to training, coming to play the game. I'm talking about at the international level, whether India plays Australia or England plays West Indies, you're going to do a lot of tests on the support staff and also the players before they come into play, which means that they are also going to be kept away from most people. You have to look at the way they're going to eat their food. You have to make sure that they're not meeting anybody. So for everything over there, when such is the case, why not bring the game back properly? I don't understand when people say you can't use saliva, you can't use this, you can't use that. I don't understand when people are going to be tested negative and only then can they come onto the field. What is going to happen? And again, people said no spitting on the ball. What happens also if somebody suddenly forgets? Because we've been all so conditioned to use spit on the ball to get that viscosity. So say suddenly if one bowler, say Clark or Jimmy Anderson walking back to the mark, by mistake, by habit uses saliva. So do you throw that ball away? And as Rahul said, if something happens, God forbid, if something happens, what happens? You'll have to, because at the end of the day, you're trying to quarantine people who are coming in contact with anybody who's tested positive. Also, as Mr. Subaya said, ours is also a contact sport. You're standing at slips, you're standing next to the keeper, you're constantly chatting, there's a lot of sweat and there's a lot of breathing which goes on. Even in the dressing room, are you going to make sure that guys are sitting in different rooms, or are they going to be sitting in the same room? So there are lots of things. For me, per se, I just feel if everybody is COVID negative, and I'm talking about the support staff, the players, I think only then should they come and play the game as normal as it was. If after that something happens, you can't help it. But you have to play the game in the fairest possible way and the normalest, on the naturalist possible way, by getting only COVID negative people. So it's a tough one at the moment. I think everybody is trying to play it safe, but I just feel that there are certain things which belie logic for me.
Okay. Well, again, very candidly put across. So I think everybody is kind of waiting and watching and keeping fingers crossed. I think that's the situation as I see it across sports, not just cricket, but you take whichever sport. I've come to the end of the panel discussion. So can we, whoever's been curating the questions can take over from here? Sini?
Right. I have two questions from the chat box I've picked up because we're running short of time. So it would not allow us to take questions directly from the audience. So the first question is open to all the panelists, and the question is, for overall progress of sports, we need investment from various stakeholders apart from central or state governments. How are we creating opportunities for sports to become a full-blown industry and attractive for investors?
Now, who is that? Is it anybody, or is that particular?
Yeah, it's open to all the panelists.
So I don't know if Harish is there. Does he want to take it? Because he had to leave at 6. As I had heard.
Harish, Mr. Harish has left.
Oh, yeah.
So he just is left.
I say the virtual technology to grow here, and it's the biggest opportunity.
He's there. Mr. Harish is there. Yeah. Sorry, Dr. Shilpa, you were saying something. After that, we can have.
I was just telling that virtual technology is the greatest opportunity for the the sponsorer and the people, because there is always, when one door closes, many opens up. So is the time for entire era to change and to get into the new era, and we are just taking surfing that wave. So when we are surfing the wave, we have to think into the virtual reality and the technology subject. I think that is the investors who want to look up onto it, where the sponsors walk in, where everybody walk in, that it create atmosphere which we have seen in Europe, that how they work in a very different way when it comes to work from home. So I think that technology is going to be the biggest part, and people will come to invest.
Okay. The other question, Sini? Or we got Harish to answer?
Is it speakerphone on?
Unmute yourself. Zubair, you can unmute Mr. Thawani.
I am unmuted.
All right.
I think the very macro level answer to that is, when you talk about investments in sport, you're looking at investments in two categories of sport. One is the infrastructure for sport. And I think at the beginning in the first panel, the discussion was there on the infrastructure in India is lacking. So there has to be huge, enormous infrastructure in investment in sports so that more people can play. And when more people can play, then there are more consumers of the sport. Remember that the greatest fan of a sport is one who's played that sport. There can be armchair fans, but the greatest fan is always the one who's played the sport. If you played basketball, you'll follow basketball. Why does cricket get such a following? Because everyone has played some gully cricket with a rubber ball as a child. So that's one part of the investment. And the second part of the investment is in the structure of the sport, which is what federations do. School sport, college sport, under 19, under 21, the whole structure that BCCI has done so well for the sport, academies, coaches, the works. Now, the infrastructure in investment, there are two models, and I think the hybrid model works best. The Russian model in the old days was state-sponsored infrastructure. The Chinese model is more state, less private. The American model is most private, less state. But at the municipal level, if you notice, if you look at any American city, there'll be municipal tennis courts, municipal basketball courts, municipal swimming pools. So the cities invest in the infrastructure of the sport. The federal government invests less in that. So therefore, in India, the only model that, in my view, can work in the infrastructure of the sport is a public-private partnership. I don't think the government has either the will or the resources to be able to build billions and billions of dollars of infrastructure across the country. And it's more, because it's a complicated division of responsibility in between the center and the states. Odisha has done such a good job. Some other states have not done such a good job. So I think if the governments was to work together and create a white paper and a policy for public-private partnerships in infrastructure of sport. Gujarat has done some work in that area, which is, I think, getting good initial results. Then you will be able to see enormous amount of infrastructure rolling out across the country, such that kids from families that don't have private club memberships can go and just play. They play, they'll become fans, they become consumers, and therefore inevitably the other side of the investment follows. So to my mind, it's not something that you can do in 6 months or 1 year. And I don't think it's COVID related in any manner. I think this has been going on for decades in this country. If you look at a 5 to 10 year plan, I see no reason why. I mean, I'm not saying we'll compete with America because they've had a 50-year, 70-year legacy. But why is it the greatest sporting nation on earth? Why does New Zealand, ask yourself, produce more champion teams per capita of land and per capita of population? 3.5 million population country that has excelled in virtually every sport. I mean, they're a top hockey nation, they're a top cricket nation, they're obviously a top rugby nation. They're not bad at soccer at all. They even produce golf champions. 3.5 million people. Why? Because almost all those 3.5 million people played sport as a child. They participate, and the infrastructure is great in New Zealand. If we can create the infrastructure, there is no reason why we will not have thousands of more successful athletes like Dutti, Sabha Karim, Murli Kartik. These are role models that people want to emulate, but can't emulate because they don't have the infrastructure available to go out and train and to just play. That's, I'm sorry, a lengthy answer to a short question, but I think it has to be a 5 to 10 year plan, and the central government and state governments have to get together to agree to what model works best, and then put it out to the private sector to say, here it is. Take this piece of land, create the infrastructure, build, operate, transfer bases or long lease bases, whatever it is. Recover your money by whatever, creating stores, restaurants, food courts, etc. But create the infrastructure which youngsters can go out and use. Thank you, Ayaz. I have to quit, and I'm going to take you because I have a 6 o'clock call to attend.
Yeah.
Appreciate. Thank you, all my fellow panelists and the people who participated in the seminar. It's been extremely enriching for me, and I'll stay in touch with all of you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Thawani, for addressing that question, and Dr. Desai. Now I come to the next question. The question is, emphasis should be given now in the sporting activities. Coaches, trainers, players, and other involved in sporting activities can start with micro and macro level, keeping physicality as norms. This is my view. So what is the suggestion of the panelists? So this question is open to all the panelists.
So who wants to have a go at it? But open to all the panelists, then you'll have multiple answers. Why don't you ask one person to respond to it?
Yeah.
Mr. Menon, you are the right person to throw that question to the panelist.
Yeah, as a moderator, you have that authority.
So let me ask Murli Karthik.
Look, Sini, you'll have to come up with the question again because I lost a bit of it whilst you were speaking.
So the emphasis should be given now in the sporting activities. Coaches, trainers, players, and other involved in the sporting activities can start with macro and micro level, keeping physicality as norms. This is my view. So what is the suggestion of the panelists?
I think that's always been the case, isn't it? I think you'll have to keep that as a minimum ballpark. When you talk about the physicality of every sport, I think the coaches, the people who are in charge of teams, I think they're always in play. They're always the ones who are doing that. So I don't think anything changes. It's the only thing is that when does it start for everyone? How can normalcy be brought in, and when will that normalcy come in? When will everybody be comfortable enough to understand that, look, these are the things which we have been doing, which has got us thus far, and these are the things which we can start again. I think that is where the problem arises, or problem is right now. It's not about what needs to be done. I think everybody is sure what needs to be done. I'm pretty sure that some of them are also trying to get back to normalcy in their own ways. People who have some access to space, people who have some access to the respective sport they play. But I think everybody is crippled by the fact that you can't move about, you can't do many things. And for that to change, I think a normalcy has to come in. Otherwise, what he has suggested is generally what happens in the world of sport.
Great.
Thank you, Mulli. I think I'm done with all the questions. So over to you, Mr. Menon. Yeah.
Well, I just need to, thank everybody, all the panelists who are here, and obviously also those who logged in. Thank you to CII and the Odisha government for giving me also this platform. I've had a lot to learn, educate myself, and just hope that we get past this this phase of our lives. This is unprecedented. I think none of us will ever forget it till the last day that we live. And hopefully there are great learnings to take, and we all emerge stronger from it. That's all I can say. I think, and sports is one of the greatest mediums to emerge stronger. Not just because we can all gym and become fitter, but also because it gives you a sense. Ultimately, physical sports is locomotion. As a child, the first thing you learn to do is to crawl, and then to walk, and then to run. Locomotion is so important in human existence. And I think the sooner we get back to being active, not being locked down, I think that will just be it'll be a different world, as we all know, post-COVID. But I'm sure that all of us are prepared in a slightly different way to face the world when it re-emerges. Once we get onto the other side of the COVID-19, in our lives.
I want to say about the mother and the kid which you have mentioned. Just I'll take 1 minute on that. That who will win the race? I have taken up that topic few years back. And I have said as a psychologist, only healthy will win the race. So, the mother and the parents need to motivate their children on their physical aspects and allow them to keep doing. There are certain drills, because if they are more Google children and if they are finding the awareness on their own, it's going to be the biggest disaster. So I think the under 9, under 11 team need to really been taken care for the virtual reality they are using. So I think the
future in any case.
Well, I think if you can get your kids to move in this day and age, those parents definitely need awards because it's very, very difficult getting your kids to, do exercise. And especially now is for them the perfect excuse not to do so. I can speak
No, I
from
think that
experience.
the best way to do that is when parents start saying no to the whims and fancies of kids.
Yes.
Unfortunately, what doesn't happen is parents don't say no. So once the no comes, you're not going to get a mobile, you're not going to get an iPad, you're not going to get a PS3. Then the next best thing that a kid can do is move his butt.
Believe me, being a mother of a teenager, even no doesn't work. I mean, it's very difficult to get kids, and even if you show us being example. So, but anyways, thank you so much to all our speakers today. We have a few minutes left. We have a formal vote of thanks. So if you can please stay with us, I am going to invite Mr. Kamal Agarwal, convener of MSME CII Odisha State and also the managing director of PGL Group of Companies, requesting him to kindly propose a vote of thanks, please.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. What a session it has been. Thank you, everybody. I mean, starting from our Principal Secretary Sports, Sri Vishal Dev, who stressed the need of public-private partnership for promotion of sports and focus on sports other than cricket, focus on nurturing state-based talent, continued focus of on making Odisha the sports destination of India. It's already hosted such big, great events for last 4-5 years. Mantra being the sports for youth and youth for future. I mean, what better administrators can we get for the state? We humbly thank our Honorable Minister for taking out time, Shri T.K. Behera, for his keynote address, where he stressed the need for immediate, he stressed the exercise going on for immediate resumption of sporting and training infra. FIFA 2021 is already ready to kick in. The new date is set in. The post-corona push to make sports truly inclusive for all by the state government. The high performance centers, the upgradation of sports infra in the state, training, skill development, and sports education are being stressed upon. And Odisha certainly is set to become the sports superpower thanks to the proactive state leadership of our Honorable CM, our young minister, and our dynamic secretary. I would just like to apologize on behalf of our Vice Chairman CII State, Mr. Manish Kharbanda, who could not join due to some sudden emergencies. We had an excellent first panel discussion on the topic of the economic impact of COVID on sports, where Mr. Harish Thawani, the founder of Indus Club, he was a ray of optimism. He stressed optimism about sports being the first social contact activity to revive from uncertain COVID scenario. Sports being here since eternity, and it is going to last till infinity. Sports economy in stadia income, sponsorships will certainly decline, but it will recover sooner than later. We have to be optimistic about that. Yes, broadcasters, sponsors, bidders shall make hay and will be able to squeeze the federations, boards temporarily, albeit, and probably they deserve that much of room now. We thank Mr. Ashish Bhushan, the Director of Procam International, for he made us conscious about the opportunity at hand to deliver and revamp the whole ecosystem. We thank Jaidev Mahapatraji, the football coach from our state, who expressed satisfaction on constructive cooperation by all stakeholders in terms of remuneration compromising, who stressed that a precautionary and prepared approach by all shall help us come back stronger. So the conclusion, certainly, fan is the king. Fan is the person who thrives sport and will make a comeback sooner or later. Only the administrators, the stakeholders, they need to come together and put their conviction, might, and willingness in tiding over the situation. We had an excellent second panel on the recovery strategy led by Mr. Taba Karim, our former Indian cricketer, one of my fave, and the General Manager BCCI, who put focus on resumption of domestic and international cricket across varied spectrums by creation of safe environment built with new restart strategies and mechanism. We had Mr. Mukul Chaudhary, Chief of Sports Excellence Center, Tata Steel, who stressed need for the conducting of the events and ensuring continuity, which is the most important need of the hour, in spite of all the challenges that we are facing. We had our great Duti Chand, the Olympian, the famous Indian sprinter, and again, a very own state champion, who recounted the adversities faced by the sports person, the health issues due to discontinuation of professional strength training, the financial pressure due to unavoidable cost of maintenance staff, the future uncertainty and the depletion of financial reserves in such a scenario. And certainly Tokyo was a big personal loss for her. We had an excellent third panel where retaining of sports business was discussed. Again, one of my fave, Murli Karthik, our former Indian cricketer, who stressed on the right attitude of sustenance and compromise by all stakeholders to move forward and see a bright future. We have Dr. Shilpa Desai, the sports scientist, the health and psychologist and wellness expert, who brought focus on the scientific need to rejuvenate sports ecosystem and the sports person's psyche. We had Dr. Subaya. We thank him, the former Indian hockey keeper and coach, for sharing great wisdom with us. Thank you to our excellent moderator, Mr. Ayaz Menon, the celebrity sports journalist, author, columnist. It's always such a great opportunity to hear you and read everything that you write. Our ever charming MC, Ms. Sanati Pani, our Odisha State CII Secretariat led by Ms. Sini Mohanty, for putting up the whole panel together and putting such a great effort. Odisha has been a champion state in handling crises of all types, excelling in disaster management. Odisha is the sun rising from the east in sports universe, and Odisha is completely geared up to set an example in the sports recovery for a stronger future. With all this optimism, thank you all who attended. Thank you all the panelists. Thank you everybody who put an effort. Thank you all who have attended. Certainly, we all have to be optimistic that sports is certainly going to be the first contact where we all come back into our regular lives, and we have to be geared up and make it even more stronger for the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Agarwal, for your warm vote of thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much to our speakers and viewers for being part of this forum today. We cannot conclude without thanking our sponsors who have come forward in these trying times for a good cause. We want to thank MGM Odisha. We would like to thank the Odisha Cricket Association, Dalmia Cement, and PGL Honda. And I would like to now conclude our session with these positive words, which will give us inspiration to go on, by renowned international basketball champion Michael Jordan. And I quote, "I have failed over and over again and in my life, and that is why I succeed," unquote. So thank you so much once again, ladies and gentlemen, and here's wishing you a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Stay safe, stay healthy, all of you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Stay happy and stay healthy, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much.
Thank you. Stay safe, everyone.
Stay safe.